I'm Kenny Hall, Executive Vice President of the Arkansas Chamber of Commerce and the Associated Industries of Arkansas. We're a private nonprofit corporation representing a rapidly growing number of businesses, up to about 950, all shapes and sizes from all over the state of Arkansas. We were invited here today, and we're happy to come and try to provide some information. First and foremost, let me start out by saying that the position of our organization on immigration is that this is a federal issue. We supported comprehensive immigration reform in Congress this summer because we believed it offered many needed changes while being mindful of the impact these changes might have on business interests throughout our state and the entire country. The comprehensive immigration reform in Congress this summer that failed balanced border security issues with a way to address undocumented workers. It was not flawless, but it did provide answers to some critical problems. We now fear, and one of the reasons we supported the legislation this summer is that by failing to pass that this summer, Congress may be a few years away from getting back to this issue. However, because Congress did fail to act, we're not in favor of states stepping in beyond the federal boundaries. Another concern we have about immigration legislation is the potential burden it deposits on businesses. We fear some flawed enforcement measures that target the business community will cause the cost of doing business to dramatically go up. We also fear some poorly designed legislation could also cause a dramatic decrease in necessary workers. We believe a proper study of immigration's impact in Arkansas must include a broad review of economic impact. Excuse me. Keep hungry and in response to the request today, I did not have any in-house research. And I didn't feel like we could really compile any using our existing member businesses that would be accurate. However, in checking around, we learned about the Rockefeller Institute, which I think you've all heard about and discussed. However, and if I've heard this correctly, I've heard the Rockefeller study, which was put together by the Rockefeller Foundation, the Urban Institute, and the Keenan Institute of Private Enterprises in North Carolina. Had 2 volumes with an executive summary. I believe most of the data that y'all have been discussing came from the volume 1 that discussed there was a profile of the immigrants themselves. I have prepared some comments for you from volume 2, which addresses the economic impact of immigration in Arkansas. In your packets, I prepared, actually I did not prepare, I asked the Rockefeller Foundation to prepare some written testimony for you that summarizes volume 2. I was able to get that to staff on Friday. I apologize to Kristen and her staff. They had already done some of the table of contents and things they had to redo just for me to get that in. But I wanted to make sure you had my comments today in writing. The rest of my comments are just going to be a briefer summary of the 3 to 5 pages that are in your book. The study used some basic data that they got from the U.S. government and looked at 3 aspects of an economic impact. First, they looked at the effect of immigrants' labor. Second, they looked at the effect of the laborers' consumer spending. And third, they looked at the effect that immigrants have as taxpayers and users of government services, which I think is right on point for this study. They found that labor power is the primary positive effect that anyone can have on a state's economy. However, this effect is also the most difficult to measure precisely. The study estimated the impact of immigrant labor by asking 2 questions. First, they asked, what would be the impact on an industry's economic output if immigrants were not here and could not be replaced? Secondly, they asked, costs would be replaced at pace for native-born workers with a similar level of education. The answer to these questions
suggested that immigrant workers contribute immensely to the economic output of Arkansas and to the cost competitiveness of a number of key Arkansas industries. The manufacturing industry in particular has grown to depend increasingly upon immigrant workers. The study's estimates indicate that without immigrant labor, the output of the state's manufacturing industry would likely be lowered by $1.4 billion. That's with a B. $1.4 billion lower without the immigrant workers. Conversely, the state's manufacturing wage bill
could be as much as $95 million higher if the same output were to be maintained. These labor cost savings help keep Arkansas's businesses competitive, while others are passed on in the form of lower prices to consumers. The study expressed a strong belief that immigrants displace few, if any, native workers. And I know y'all have been discussing that today. The analysis suggests that immigrants have rushed into jobs that native workers were leaving. Before the immigrants began arriving, more native workers are leaving those industries than immigrants are coming in to replace them. In that sense, this study believes that immigrants may actually be reviving some troubled and declining industries. In order to be conservative, this study estimates include only the direct effects of employment. They did not calculate any ripple effects on farmers, for example, if immigrants were not able to work in their food-related manufacturing. The study also examined the impact of immigrant spending on the Arkansas economy. In measuring this impact, they took into account the consumer expenditures of the immigrants and the indirect effects of this spending on suppliers and on the added employees needed by retailers and other businesses on serving the population. According to the Rockefeller analysis, Arkansas immigrants had an estimated total after-tax income of $2.67 billion. Again, that's with a B, $2.67 billion. This was in 2004, which is the latest numbers that they were able to get. Now, they estimate about 20% of this is sent home, saved, or used on interest payments. So after you take the 20% of the $2.67 billion, they estimate the spending impact of immigrants' earnings as $2.9 billion positively for the state of Arkansas. That's again with a B, $2.9 billion. Much of that is in 4 counties: Benton, Washington, Sebastian, and Pulaski counties. Immigrant spending, like the spending of anyone else, generates a wide range of employment opportunities. In Arkansas's case, immigrants, especially those recently arrived from Latin America, often specialize in unskilled work, allowing a larger proportion of the native-born population to specialize in work that requires more training and generates higher rewards. The third area of the study's analysis was to examine the effect of immigrants on state and local finances. All residents make contribution to those finances through taxes and user fees. All residents make claims on localities and the state through their use of services. The study investigated 3 major categories of expenses: education, health services, and corrections. The large and growing immigrant population was reflected in a fiscal impact on the state budget, with the cost of education, health services, and corrections totaling an estimated $237 million. That's with an M this time. $237 million in 2004. However, the study determined that those costs were more than balanced by direct and indirect tax contributions of $257 million. Therefore, according to this study, they believe that immigrants in Arkansas have provided the state a budget surplus of $19 million. And again, this is from the Rockefeller Foundation. Oh, and by 2010, that number earlier that I gave you, $3.9 billion, is estimated to be $5.2 billion by 2010. Mr. Chairman, that's all I prepared. If I have any questions, I'll try my best to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Representative Green, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Hall, for being here representing the State Chamber. I know y'all do hard work, because I don't know of any bill I've ever run that y'all didn't oppose. So I know that you work hard. In the process of election, I've been waiting for that moment. Excuse me, need a little humor at times in here. Can you tell me why the bill before Congress failed? I know you favored that bill. Why did that bill fail?
I don't have a lot of direct knowledge. We considered bringing some folks in from Washington to answer more direct questions about that. We knew where we would be time-wise, where we were on the agenda. I'll speculate just a bit for you, though. It appeared to me, and I got in this fairly late, that it was a loosely prepared, loosely built coalition. Bipartisan, I believe I'm correct in saying. But there was a pretty strong grassroots effort there and after there near the vote.